Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dusk Network's Community Forum. My name is Fahad Rana, Dusk Network's official community builder, and I want to thank all of you with us today on Wednesday, October 5th, 2022, for joining this session of the AMA as my guests. This is a tri-weekly AMA session where we bring in one or more of our specialists in the team to talk about different aspects of Dusk Network. So Emma, let's start with your take on the overall meetup for the Italy trip for the team. What were the goals and how much of this team's productivity has helped evolutionize our goals for the protocol? What were our achievements? And can you give us just a general overview of what was deemed?
Yes, I'm actually going to do better than that. I am immediately going to ask you and Hein a question. When ITN?
Hein, I think you should take this one since you're project over lead.
Yeah, that's a good question. So for ITN, and I'm going to give a convoluted answer if you don't mind, Emma. For ITN, I was designing a pretty broad and big program that encompassed a lot of different items. Emma told me that this was a pretty big scope, and that I didn't put enough focus on the first thing at hand, which is node decentralization. So currently, I've been working on splitting out the pieces that I set up because some of them are very much usable in the future, but they sort of distract from the core thing, which is the node decentralization, which I somewhat trivialized in terms of how much value and size there is in doing that. So, in terms of the progress towards doing that from a technical point of view, we have this piece of code to make this happen currently in DevNet. So that's the one that we use ourselves to test. It is tested, it has stats, but we still have to do some more testing, manual testing from our end. Then we can push it to testnet, and in theory, then is when we can actually do the node decentralization for the community. Now, one of the reasons why I personally haven't pushed in trying to make this happen faster is because I've spoken to a couple of people in the company about priorities and when it makes sense to do ITN. And the primary piece of information I got out of it is that we should do it when it makes the most sense and adds the most value for us long term. And I didn't feel like the last month or so was the point where it was valuable for us to prioritize this, especially given that we have a lot of different interesting items currently on our plates that require, in my view, much more attention because they're very important for the long-term interest of the company, but and the protocol itself. But there's nothing stopping us from doing this part this month. It's just a matter of prioritizing it a bit more. So I'm not sure if that answers the question and whether people have some questions around that itself, what I just said.
Well, let's see what the people will come up with later on during the Q&A section. From my perspective, there is a small clarification that I feel that we need to focus on. One clarification is basically the execution and when ITN is going to commence, and the other is when we are going to communicate what the plan is. So I think we are late, and I want to apologize to the overall community basically for being late in propagating what the plan is. Admittedly, I was a little too optimistic in hoping to meet or to be able to propagate the details of the ITN plan before the retirement of the pre-staking contract. And I want to ensure that the plan at least is going to be propagated in a timely manner. Then the execution can take a little while longer. Although I am perfectly confident that there isn't really much technical changes that we need to introduce to the protocol in order to start with the community node staking. But it is a pain point, and we need to do these both as soon as possible. So while I want to reassure the entirety of the community that this is our focus, I also want to point your attention, Hein, and your Fahad as well, on working out the details as fast as possible so that they can be reviewed. Our research team can look into the if the incentive makes sense, and then we can talk to the community about it openly, and then implement it as soon as we can. So I wanted to dedicate a little bit of time to talking about IDN because it's important for me to have clarity about this, and because quite frankly it is something. It is a task that we took ourselves in front of the community, and we definitely need to deliver. All right. For what concerned the rest, I had the pleasure during our time together to see many different things coming to fruition. Particularly, I had time to talk with everybody and to tune everybody's focus in delivering as soon as possible all the different parts of the technologies, but also to consolidate what is our business strategy. Because of that, we also had quite an intensive session together with Dimitri, who was fresh from his presentation at the ZK Summit, and he reached us immediately afterwards. And he spent quite some time, some very productive time, not only together with the development team, but also with the business team. And I know that you, Ryan, had quite a deep conversation together with him at the cusp of two different topics that normally are, not really seen together. One being the business side or the regulatory side, and the other one being the cryptographic side. But I am very happy that you guys talked, and seems to me like you reached a sort of an understanding. So, what was the topic of your conversation, Ryan? If you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, sure, of course. So what we wanted to do with Dimitri first was to sort of take it back to basics and explain, exactly like what is a zero knowledge proof. I think a lot of people who've been around with us since the beginning are quite comfortable with this, but it's something that for a lot of people on the streets, quite a complicated thing to understand. The idea of proving something without handing over the necessary documentation to prove it is a little bit complicated. So we started off by going from there, and then we sort of worked our way up and went through it quite logically. I think it'll be enjoyable when the video comes out. What we sort of moved to next, as I think Dimitri did a very good job of explaining, is that when we employ DLT technology for stuff, unfortunately, one of the side effects is to expose maybe more information, more data than we would normally be comfortable with. And so Dimitri explained very well that what we're doing with zero knowledge proofs is then putting that privacy back on top. So this led us to the obvious question, which is, well, okay, if we're like, does that go against the spirit of what we're trying to do in the industry? And again, as he very well explained, is not really. So what we're doing is bringing privacy back to the same level that we already get from our existing centralized services, such as banks and the finance industry. So we're not adding opaqueness on top. That's not the point. What we're doing is just bringing it back to the standard of privacy that we already expect from something that handles our money, our transactions, our income. Of course, we expect a large degree of privacy. You wouldn't want people on the street to just easily get hold of a list of all the things that you've spent money on your Visa card this month. So I think you did a very, very good job of explaining that. It's very accessible to anybody, no matter what level they're coming in to this topic. And what we want to do in the coming months is to start to apply some of his understanding of zero knowledge, and particularly some of his work, to specific bits of law around things like compliance, where somebody is currently required to provide a certain level of proof, and how we can use zero knowledge proofs to prove that in a particular way. So to come back to the classic example, in many financial products, you have to prove that you don't have certain passports, like you're not North Korean or Iranian. And okay, we may have our opinions on that, but this is the law. So I think generally a lot of us probably okay with that. But the trick is that at the moment, and this is where we start to get into something a little bit also almost a little bit meta, is it's quite hard to prove a negative under the current system. Like proving a negative almost always inevitably forces you to prove a positive in order to prove the negative, if that makes sense. So in order to prove that you're not North Korean, you have to prove that you're something else, as in American or Dutch or something. And again, this is a weakness with the system that we can fix with zero knowledge proofs, so that you can prove that you're not North Korean without having to necessarily provide any other information than that. And so that's what we'd like to do over the next couple of months, is take that knowledge and apply it to certain specific parts of compliance law to show how it's not just a hypothetical idea. This has very real implications in the real world.
I think it is very clear, and I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, privacy is definitely something which is very, very important and very, pretty much at the core of the entirety of the program of Dusk Network. In fact, I have to say that, just thinking back on when we started to develop also our vision, then we wanted to, privacy was sitting pretty much at the core of everything. And because of that, we started to dabble and we started to experiment with the only technology at that particular point in time that I deemed viable, which was the zero knowledge technology. There were different kind of threads or different kind of technologies that we could have used, like, for example, homomorphic encryption or multi-party computations, cryptographic technologies that, in fact, provide privacy. But we went with zero knowledge technology. And the interesting thing is that zero knowledge technology doesn't only have applications in privacy preserving and confidential transaction, but also in the execution of said transaction. And it has so many implications, so much that right now we are seeing zero knowledge technology being employed and used by a lot of different DLTs, decentralized ledgers, in order to scale these systems. Whether these systems need scaling right now is questionable, but it is certainly very important that we are mastering the underlying technology, and we have somebody that is one of the pioneer and one of the world-renowned cryptographers with a specialization in zero knowledge tech, like Dimitri, that is guiding also the conversation on a lot of different other places. Speaking of which, this is not exactly related to the Italian week, but it is definitely something that is related to Dusk and very important for us. Another question for you, Ryan. I wanted to check with you if you heard by the fact that today sorts of signs a new landmark in the markets in crypto assets, the MiCA regulation, considering that it passed in the European Council this morning. And if I am not mistaken, the legislation needs to pass just one additional vote in the European Parliament. I think it is scheduled for next week. And if that happens, then there is a serious chance that laws will be in place most likely at the start of 2024. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, so they're very much on track to pass it. There haven't been too many major changes. I think a couple of AMAs ago we discussed MiCA. Of course, we have the blog series as well to talk through the points. But yeah, it very much seems like it's on track to pass, which will be quite, I think, as we mentioned before, quite revolutionary to have a very clear set of rules, a very clear set of guidelines as to how crypto assets can be issued, how they can be managed, how they can be custodianized, placed into custodianship, shall we say? And this, in again, so I mean, as an industry, we're not always the industry is not always necessarily receptive of regulation, but in our particular case, we are, right? Because it makes our job a heck of a lot easier as a Reg DeFi product. It's so much easier for us to build the product if we know what the rules are that we have to build into the foundational layer. And so this, regardless of where people fit on the text of the bill itself, this is very welcome news, and it makes our job a lot easier. So we're definitely on track to get this within the next 18 months, which is what we expected. Yeah.
This is absolutely true. I would say that this also offers us a great opportunity to diversify ourselves, to diversify Dusk from all the different other chains, all the different other protocols. I was talking about this with several different team members. One of the implication for that, set Dusk apart from all the other protocol is the fact that we are willing to do something which no other blockchain can accept at this particular point in time to do, which is to limit ourselves, to restrict ourselves, to focus ourselves on a certain region, which is the European Union region. It is something that, for example, would be pretty unthinkable for Ethereum, for example. I mean, it's not that you can have an Ethereum Europe or an Ethereum Brazil or an Ethereum North America or whatever. And this is something that is particularly important for us because we are really aiming to ace the MiCA regulation. We want to launch mainnet before the MiCA regulation gets in place, but by then we still want to be completely compliant with it. And this is going to be a strong point for us, a strong USP, the fact that we are willing essentially to fit a very well-defined region, a very well-defined legislation. Because legislation and regulations, they are specific to region. They can be harmonized, of course, and it is not really impossible to expand once you are fitting a regulation. But certainly just doing it the other way around, going global from day one, and then afterwards trying to fit a certain particular territory-specific legislation after the fact is particularly difficult, and it is something that has been always in our mind to focus on a certain territory. Ryan, sorry to ask you again your opinion. I don't want Hein to feel a little too left apart. There will be other occasion for him to comment, but I think it is pretty important to stress this and to ask for your opinion about what I just said.
Yeah, well, I mean, not surprisingly, I agree. So I suppose we can think of three. I'm going to say three right now. Let's see if I can remember all three. It was what I was thinking when you were talking. So first off, that's definitely true. It's great for us as a company as well because also it's just on so many levels. We want to build something very specific. We want to target a very specific set of customers. Focus is always good, not just in a tech company, but in any company. And so this helps to give us, I mean, purely from a company perspective, helps give us a very, very clear focus, a very, very clear selling point, a USP. So that's great in that sense. Secondly, I would say it also fits in very much with the way that the internet has been trending. And again, people have very mixed opinions on this. I'm sure there's a lot of people in our community are not fans of this development, but it's unavoidable to deny that the internet is splintering into jurisdictional-based versions of the internet where rules and laws are different, where different websites are accessible, where different rules apply, especially around things like data protection and what can be advertised. And so again, fitting into that internet of the future is something that we're able to do if we can build this in at the foundational level. So I think it's definitely a sign of building for the internet as it will be, as opposed maybe to the internet as it is, which is, again, always a great thing. And number three, I would throw on top of that is also that I think it's perfectly reasonable to expect that we see something similar to what we saw with GDPR. So when GDPR, which is the data privacy legislation, for those not familiar, came out in the EU, it was a revolutionary, first of its kind piece of legislation, and it is currently in the process of being imitated around the world. So countries and jurisdictions that realized that they didn't have a very good or very robust data protection system were looking at this piece of legislation and thought, that's great. Maybe we can just cross out the EU's name and put our name on the top. And why not? Because legislation is hard. It's very difficult to write it. It's very difficult to write it in a good way. And so if you have a piece of legislation as a country, it's very smart just to take it and make some slight changes and pass it off as your own work. We don't get rewarded for that in school, but you certainly get rewarded for that at the government level. So we're seeing that with GDPR. So the next obvious question to me has to be, will we see this with MiCA? And I think the answer is yes. We've heard a few things coming out of a few governments, particularly in Latin America, that have strong trading ties to the EU, who are looking at this MiCA thing and thinking maybe this can work for us as well, maybe on a Mercosur level or possibly just individual states. And I think that's very plausible. Other countries which work on civil law systems where this could apply very well. We even see also across the English Channel in the UK, the British are currently building their first version of their own version of MiCA. And it's clear from looking at the discussions they've had so far that they have paid a lot of attention to MiCA and are building their rules around being slightly unique, but largely in line with what the EU is doing. So why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because it's great for us to have a focus at first, but what's very cool is that if this legislation gets adopted by other jurisdictions worldwide, this also puts us in a great position to make minimal tweaks and be able to reach beyond the EU when the appropriate time comes. So I'm very excited by all of this.
Understandably so also. All right, let's focus on something a little different, because one of the topics that was among the most important that we touched upon during the Italian week was the upcoming pilots. And I know that this is a topic that is very dear to the community, is dear to us as well, because pilots, or the capability of creating smart contracts that somebody else, some other institution is going to use primarily to gain knowledge, but also to foresee a long-term partnership together with Dusk, and an executive partnership, not the kind of partnership that other blockchain have with AWS, for example. This was a very interesting and a very pregnant topic that we touched upon. And before touching upon it in generic terms, because I really do not want to disveil anything, I don't want to disclose much about it, but one thing that I actually hoped to see during this week was to see the new version of the VM being rolled out, or at least finalized before migrating all the different smart contracts that right now are on VM1, so the Genesis contract. We just bumped into a small problem that now has been solved, so I think we are on track for having the VM, or the new version of the VM, ready very, very soon. And that was one of the prerequisites in order to implement these pilots. Now, I'm not really the kind of person that wants to create hype in any way, shape, or form. So let's not hype these pilots too much. However, I wanted to ask Hein what he thought when Pascal announced the kind of pilots that we are going to implement. in the near future. And for near future, I mean near. I mean, I'm not talking about tomorrow or next month, but certainly an horizon which is significantly close. Hein, what was your thought about it?
Wait, you don't want me to hype this or feel hyped about this one?
I really
No, I
don't
mean,
want you to hype it, but I want you to communicate about your perceived importance and how much these pilots are shaping our current roadmap right now, and if they are in line with our roadmap phases, like for example Aurora and all the other phases that are upcoming in our program.
I was
yeah,
gonna say before Hein even answers, I just want to say that it is pure hype, but I don't want to oversell it either. But yeah, go ahead with it, Hein. Absolutely, completely useless tidbit from me, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it does fit very well in the roadmap and the way it's structured and set up. These type of pilots, they're really non-trivial. Getting one of these and doing it well, satisfying the requirements that these parties have, is the downstream effects in terms of biz dev over the long term is invaluable. So to me, when I heard this, I thought, okay, everything we do that's not related to making sure that we succeed in doing this is a distraction. That's how important I considered it.
In your opinion, considering that you have real-world experience in implementing pilots and then seeing them delivered, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you've been participating to one of the pilots together with the Norwegian government, right?
Central bank, yeah.
In the central bank, sort of CBDC. So, in your experience, for what you have seen, what could we expect after rolling out a successful pilot? If obviously if we are successful in doing that, what would be, according to you, something that is likely for us to see? Are we going to see an acceleration in our program, in our technology, in the awareness of our project, or it is going to be a little bit of a slow burn?
Yeah, that kind of depends on multiple factors, but I think that if something like this gets known, then Ryan will probably not sleep for the coming months. He'll be so busy. And in terms of technology, I'm pretty sure it will make clear that the focus that Dusk has started, the path that it took, which I think is the right one, will be confirmed to be the right one, which is having a public network that anyone can use, but made primarily for getting regulated financial institutes running on top of it. That was the right decision to make, to bake that not only privacy but also compliance right in as the right direction, one that's completely ignored by others that mainly focus on a very small pie that doesn't grow as big in actual utility as is promised. And with this pilot, the legitimacy that comes with it is enormous, and the biz dev opportunities as well. It's yeah. I don't think I can express it very well in words. How important is this?
No, I hear you. It is definitely one of these pivotal moments in which everything that we have been working on need to translate into a very concrete opportunity for our partners, but also for our users. And I do believe that these pilots are actually, going to confirm that the path that we have been on for so long is the right one. And we have quite a shot to show everybody that what we've been doing so far has the potential to come to fruition and to make a difference. That is also what I do believe. Of course, nothing comes for free. There is a lot that we need to sort out. But in the meantime, I think we are perfectly on track to satisfy the requirements that we have been asked to satisfy.
That's
All right.
great. And is it okay, Emanuele, if we can backtrack on towards the rolling ITN just a bit with Hein, if that's okay with you?
No, absolutely. That was actually that was going to be my next my next topic. But please go ahead.
No worries, perfect. So Hein, you and I had been working on some of the prerequisites and documentations. Is it possible that you can explain the prerequisites and then I can basically explain some of the documentation aspect of the rolling ITN that we're going through?
Yeah, sure. And I just dropped a little bit of that just in the chat. So one of the prerequisites I made based on the interviews I had with people in the company is to get the maximum value out of it. I wanted to look at a most complete setup of the network, which would include, for instance, hatchery and all the downstream effects it has on other dependencies. But I don't necessarily.
Pie
Yeah,
crust.
sorry. That's the new announcement. It is pie crust from now on, right? So
Yes.
no more hatchery because of the weird connotations that's attached to it. It's pie crust, and there's also a symbol for it, so icons, emojis. So that's also nice, I guess. But that's not. It's not a hard requirement to have pie crust done. So in theory, we can run ITN once we say, okay, the changes we've made in our dev net, those are good. Those are good to go, and the program is laid out. Then we can, in theory, just launch the node decentralization. So there are no really strong prerequisites there besides having what we call the provisioner access list in our testnet.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I was just kind of answering one of the community members. They thought it was called bike crust, but it's actually called pie crust. So going on with the documentation, so one of our main aspects of the rolling ITN was that we wanted to basically have information on the fly for, of course, internal documentation, external documentation as well for the community and concepts and ideas and use cases where we can showcase what the protocol is about. So not only are we working on our own Dusk wiki, thanks to, of course, the initiative taken by the team, the marketing side, and of course from Emma, we're going to be possibly, well, not possibly, we're definitely going to be putting it in layman's terms as well. So if in any case you guys want to see use cases and specific scenarios, if you want to have definitions, or there's something that is technical on, let's say, GitHub that you want to have examples of, everything will have documentation for it. And we want to make sure that we emphasize on that educational barrier that perhaps some of us people have. I'm not a technical person, but I'm a bit of a layman's person, so I need to understand, let's say, aspects of the protocol, and the puzzle pieces need to come together. And with this documentation as an example, it would not only help us come down to, of course, putting down the pieces of ITN together. At the same time, it will all be available to everyone to be able to see, except for of course, the internal ones that we will be using. Is there anything else that you want to add to that, Hein, for the documentation?
Yeah, so we of course have a split currently between public and private, where private parts are mostly internal stuff, but there's already a setup that we have in mind. I'm not sure in how far we can share it, but feedback on such sort of topics is always nice. And when it comes to ITN documentation, that will be on there. And I could very well share some of the things that we've been looking at already and get some feedback from the community as well there.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. And that was part of course, the documentation side. Ryan, I did have a specific question for you, and I think we had this conversation during the Italian trip as well. And the question was, have we kind of devised a message or a narrative for the larger TradFi organizations or institutions about zero knowledge, and is it going to be more solidified post MICA? As in, like, is the narrative ready to be kind of shared with these larger organizations?
Sorry, one more time. A narrative around what, Fahad?
Yeah, the narrative around zero knowledge. So you know how we talked about how there needs to be a specific message that we can give out to these institutions, and we were still formulating it. I believe during MICA. Is it going to be solidified now that we've had some news about MICA today, as an example? I hope I'm giving the question right.
No, I think there's a few different narratives that have to be. I mean, again, I hate to answer a question with "it depends," but I think that's probably the answer to most questions in life, actually, unfortunately, despite we might pretend to the otherwise, right? But there's a few different narratives that have to be built. So it's important to remember again that MICA doesn't, for example, cover security tokens, which is covered by different legislation. So there's a couple of different narratives to go out there. And then the zero knowledge is, I think, more of a general explanation, a narrative, but also education, I guess, because again, our conversation got quite hypothetical, but that's kind of the point. So to go back to what I said before about, to disprove you're a North Korean, you have to currently prove you're an American, for example. Like, so there's a big narrative that has to be built around explaining, like, functionally how that works without getting too technical, because I think, again, for a lot of people, that's quite hard to understand, if you see what I mean, that disproving the negative and proving a positive are strongly connected in people's minds. It's the same, again, take any on the street example. If I want to prove how old I am to get into a club, people just assume that you have to pull out a card with all your information on it. Like, that's the next step in people's heads, right? That's how they think about this stuff. And so explaining that actually, I can prove that I'm, for example, over 18 or 21 or whatever, without providing any further information, including my birthday and birth year, is itself quite a logic leap, I think, for people who are used, especially in compliance. Compliance is, generally speaking, quite black and white. Either you have this document or you don't have it. That's it. And so we're going somewhere down the middle. It's a great step going forward, but yes, we have to work very hard on a narrative around that. And there are separate narratives around MICA and a third narrative around security tokens. So there's a lot of work still to do, but I think we know as an organization what we want to say, but we have to put that down in a way that reaches across the divide and explains it to people who think in a very different way. So that's my very, very long non-answer. So we're working on it, I guess, is the short form.
Thank you for that. And Emma, I have a question for you, and it's a very simple, probably, answer. I think you have mentioned the name Dimitri a few times. I'm not sure if some of the community members know about this particular person that works with Dust Network. Could you give a small summary of this individual?
Okay. Dmitry Kovratovic. Well, he's he's probably one of the most respected cryptographers in the world at this point in time. So he's the cryptographic lead of Dusk Network. We share him together with the Ethereum Foundation, also because a lot of the research that we are doing is also done in collaboration with Ethereum. And Dimitri is our lead, but he is also collaborating with the Ethereum research. In the past, Dimitri, well, the specialty of Dimitri is breaking systems, and therefore also advising on making systems very secure. Another competence that he has, another expertise that he has, is in creating hash functions. Now, hash functions are one of the most important technological building block of any blockchain. In fact, actually, a blockchain or a DLT can be seen as secured by hash functions. And initially, he is very well known worldwide to have been creating one of the probably most secure and most popular hashing algorithms right now, which is called Argon 2, which is widely used across all the different industries. in crypto, one of the things that he did early on was to create the hashing algorithm used by Zcash for their proof of work. The name escapes me right now, but it is what they are still using. For example, Bitcoin uses SHA-256, whereas Zcash uses this other hashing algorithm. And he is also the mind behind two of the most performant zero-knowledge friendly hashing algorithm, namely Poseidon, and then its successor, reinforced concrete, aka Zelbet. Zelbet means reinforced concrete in Polish. And Dimitri is practically in the known for anything that has got to do with zero-knowledge cryptography nowadays. And he works together with Marta and together with all the other cryptographers at the moment to crack recursion. So zero-knowledge recursion, which will give us the possibility of batching different transactions all together. Another novelty that Dimitri developed together with the rest of the Dusk team is Zedger, which is a transaction model, which is the only, in fact, transaction model that applies zero-knowledge cryptography to a security compliant way to transact. For security, I mean the regulated securities assets. I hope this was a good enough introduction. I have to say that when I well, Dimitri is one of the oldest team members of Dusk. When we published the white paper, the first white paper, together with Fulvio, then Dimitri sent me a message. He shot an email to me saying that he was extremely interested by the use of zero knowledge in communication, but most importantly, our vision about compliance. And then he offered to work for the project, and that was my celebrity moment, so to speak. Meaning that I've always been a fan of Dimitri, so I am very, very happy to be able to collaborate with him.
Well, I guess I had a celebrity moment with you. You had a celebrity moment with him, so that kind of works out in that scenario. So I just wanted to say we're almost running out of time. Are there any closing remarks from the three of you that you would like to partake in before we say goodbye to the community for today?
Yes, I would like to reassure the community that we are doing everything that we can in order to tie up a little bit some loose ends. At the moment, the focus for what concerns the technical team is to finalize PyCrust, is to put out as soon as possible the ITN program, and most importantly is to satisfy all the technological development that is a prerequisite to run the pilots together with our partners. And these are the three main points of focus, but they are all pretty close to commencement, I would like to say. And the week that we spent in Italy consolidated pretty much our roadmap and made sure that we could just eliminate everything that wasn't deemed entirely necessary to reach these three objectives. So it was a very beautiful moment for the entire team. They normally are this get together. They strengthen our relationship and make us a lot more productive because there is a direct communication among all the team members.
Absolutely, and I felt that too while being in Italy with all of you guys. Definitely get to see the personalities and the hard work that everyone puts in into the protocol, and it's absolutely magical for me in that scenario. But I also got to meet, of course, yourself and Hein and Ryan, and I got to understand the aspects of the different, I would say, angles of how we're tackling the protocol in the market, and it's a very, very complex thing, but at the same time, you know, kind of putting ourselves into a position of, I would say, focus and simplicity at this point in time while we're transitioning. So I think that's one of the aspects that I took out from this. Anything that you would like to say, Hein, before we part with the community today?
Yeah, so with regard to the Italian job, I have to be a bit careful with what I say because HR is listening, of course, but about what happened in Italy. But it was beautiful to meet everyone that was there, because a lot of team members I've never met them. It was very insightful because it was much easier to reach out to someone and then get a hands-on explanation on certain topics, whether it relates to cryptography or the VM or even BizDev related stuff, and also to reinforce into people's minds why we're doing what we're doing. So that was really nice, and very very valuable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. With regard to, for instance, more documentation and insight in what we're doing, um, the wiki will play a pretty big part in that because it will also allow others to contribute and also to get more of an insight in how everything works. And that's not only from a technical perspective, but we also want to have some tutorials in there and deeper explanations in a simplified way from a use case perspective. And all sorts of things, even from simple things like organizing your own Dusk event, I guess. So feedback on that is always welcome, especially when we open it up, and feel free to contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also the reason why we're working on the conversationalist channel on the side as well, because it contributes later on to the wiki too, in that perspective. So whatever feedback you guys give us, it's fantastic. For example, we started the discussion today, of course, on fragmentation of liquidity. And Kai is one of our members, and he had questions. So this kind of feedback actually help us formulate more things for our use cases that we will be talking about later within that wiki. So any kind of feedback from you guys is welcome, and it's always fantastic to hear from the community, anyways. But before I actually give my ending remarks, I would like to hear from Ryan if he has anything else to say, and so I can end the AMA for today.
Yeah, sure. I suppose I can echo what I said before. So, obviously, same as Hein mentioned, there was quite a few team members that I hadn't met face to face, and we do a great job of working as a distributed team. But there's always something a bit magical about being able to work face to face. It was obviously an honor and a privilege to meet Emanuele and Fahad, and it was okay to meet Hein. I guess it was fine. I'm joking, of course. It was also very nice. But yeah, no, it was great, and I think we got a lot of stuff done. Very productive week. I would also want to throw in there slightly off topic as well, but I think as people who saw the monthly dose in the last couple of days probably aware of, myself and Sabine will be participating in the launch of the leading privacy alliance for Web3 this coming Sunday. So that's something to keep an eye on, various social accounts. And that's coming up this Sunday. So there's more details about that in the monthly dose.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ryan. And Hein, you mentioned HR, and he's finally here. But anyways, so I'm going to end the AMA by saying, so that's a mark that marks the end of our discussion. An AMA with Hein, Ryan, and Emanuele. Thank you all for being part of this AMA session and gracing us with yourself to our humble community of Dusk enthusiasts. It was a pleasure to hear from your outlook and your perspective on the rolling IT and its goals that the team had devised in Italy. It was indeed thought-provoking, insightful, and we look forward to seeing you in the AMA, again, albeit on a different topic, the next one definitely, pertaining to the Epiphany moment, which will be very exciting. For now, to our community, thank you so much for being here today, and this includes our team members as well. I appreciate all of you for giving us your time for the topic today. We'll hopefully see you in the next 3 weeks for the next one. Again, this is being recorded, so you will be able to hear this within your convenience after the links are provided. Take care and have a good morning or evening wherever you're tuning in from. Take care, thank you, and salutations.